Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about some of our animals. I'm going to start with the dogs. Don't mind that. That's dim, um, diatomaceous earth because I had some ants coming in, so I just scattered that around over there. But anyway, um, yeah, okay, back to the dogs. Let's start with the dogs. Now, um, we've had scares throughout the last several years where well, it's not just a scare, many pets have died, where some of the pet food was contaminated and this and that. And now it's just getting so expensive you can't hardly afford it. And then what happens if they quit making it all together? You can't get to town to buy it, there's so many different scenarios. So let me go through this a little bit. Um, okay, now I make a dry mix first, and I just it doesn't really matter, like how many cups or this. It depends how much you're making, but you're going to use some flour, whatever kind of flour you have. Sometimes I just use almond or nut flour if I have it, but that's getting really expensive. I like to put a little bit in there anyway because it's good. The nuts are good for them. And a lot of times I put chia seeds. You get omega-3s for your dog. Dogs, their taste buds are the closest, I think, to human taste buds. That's why they love human food so much. So you need to kind of think about that, but there are some things that they can't have. Like they're not supposed to have onions or chocolate or grapes. And there's something in baked foods you get from the bakeries that's really bad for them too. It's some sort of an additive. But anyway, I add just a little bit of salt. Now, I don't use the table salt like you get Morton's or whatever, because it's really not good for them. It's not good for us either. I use Himalayan pink salt. There's several different good ones, but that's the one that I use. So I put a little bit of that in there. Turmeric's really good for them like it is us, so I put turmeric in it. Now, dogs require high calcium levels, so they need to get their calcium. So grind up some eggshells and put into it. Okay, now also they need vitamins and minerals. They eat vegetables too. Carrots, peas, green beans, all that kind of stuff's really good for them. If you have extras of those, mix them up and feed it to them. Sometimes I cut up some cheap salami ends. I'll dice it up some and fry in some eggs, and I'll feed them and cool it down. So the scrambled eggs with diced salami in it's really good for them, especially if you grow your own eggs. Nettle is one of the most nutritious herbs. Herbs are very good for dogs. Nettle's good for us and it's good for them. So what I do is I'll get my little herb grinder, coffee grinder, anything like that, and I grind it into like a flour. So I'll mix it with the flour. Sometimes I put it in my dry mix, and sometimes I just put it in here, and sometimes I have some in here, and I'll add extra in when I'm mixing this all up. Okay, so now the wet part. When you get ready to make it, fresh eggs, whatever you have, 2, 3 eggs, maybe a little water. You want it in a consistency kind of like making cornbread or something. You can add blueberries, diced sweet potatoes, carrots, peas. Dogs also require a high fat content. That's why I like to use salami for them. But I also use, when I'm making this, extra bacon grease or oil of some kind. Okay, so that kind of gives you can vary a lot of this, but that kind of gives you an idea. So you mix some of your wet. I'll put some of my dry in here, and then I'll put some of my wet stuff, whatever I have in there. Sometimes, just whatever I happen to have that's handy that I put in there. If I've been using a lot of nuts, sometimes I'll set aside a handful of walnuts or something diced up and put in it. Or, like I said, I use chia seeds, sometimes, just different little berries or things that I might have. So just no grapes, no raisins. Dogs can't have that. That's really bad for them. So no grapes, no raisins. No, 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 no. All right, so then I just put it in my handy dandy little baking dish. Now I wanted to show you. Here's some ground up eggshells. which there's already some in there, but I also, you can bake these or whatever a little bit to get rid of the smell and feed them back to your chickens. Just make sure they don't smell or look like regular eggs. You don't want to teach your chickens to eat eggs, but the calcium's really good for them. If it's good clean shells, I grind it up. Sometimes I put it in my food occasionally. I definitely put it in my dog's food because they need that extra calcium. Remember that. And then I will grease this down good with some bacon grease or something. And I might maybe add a little into my mixture when I add my wet and my dry together. I bake it, and then I just break it. I cut some big chunks and I break it up into little pieces, however much I'm going to feed them. And I'll put the rest away where the ants can't get it. Usually in the evenings, or if it's hot during the day, I'll put it in the refrigerator. Or if it's a nice cool evening, I might stick it in here because the ants won't get there, because I don't have much refrigerator room. I've just got a little teeny tiny refrigerator here. I know you can't tell from this, but it's a very small, very tiny refrigerator. So I do what I can and the best I can. Guys, cats are different. Cats are really finicky. There's not only finicky, they're made different. Their system's different. A lot of things you can give a dog, you can't give a cat. Just mainly stick with meats for cats. They're very much a carnivore. You do not use essential oils on your cat. Just being around it can make them very ill, can kill them. So do not use essential oils on your cat. They might survive if you have it in the house or something, but on them, no way. I don't let the cat inside because I use essential oils inside. You want to be careful with that with any of your animals, including your dogs. You can use a little bit with the dogs. They're a little more tolerable of it. But yeah, be careful about that. And the cats, they kind of roam around. They get a lot of their own stuff, but I just give them cat food. I don't know. If it gets where I can't get cat food, my cat's just going to have to live on that or any little extra meat scraps I might have for her. I also, if you remember about dogs, that if you raise them from the beginning on certain things, they build up stomachs to be able to handle that. I had my first Chihuahua from the very beginning. I was giving her little pieces, almost the very beginning, little pieces of bell pepper, and she grew to just love bell peppers and eat those like those were her snacks. Raw meat is really good for dogs, but if they're already grown and have never had it, they won't have the enzymes perhaps to break it down and digest it correctly. I've been feeding a little bit of raw meat here and there to my Chihuahuas for several years. So they're good with it, and if I get a little bit of raw meat, I feed that to them sometimes. Sometimes they get cooked, sometimes they get raw. I share my meat with them. I'll cut the gristle and fat, and they get a little bit of the meat with the gristle and fat. And so that's something you want to know too on your pets. Your cats, they're just carnivores. I don't mess with trying to make food for them. They just kind of have to. My cat just kind of have to make it on her own if it gets to where I can't. Right now, I try to give her a little bit of canned wet food, and I try to give her dry food. But if you're just feeding exclusively dry, that's really hard on a cat's kidneys. I can tell you that. They need the wet foods. The dry foods, I do feed mine some dry, but she gets the wet too. Plus she catches mice and stuff. So just kind of keep that in mind if they're an indoor cat, just living exclusively on hard food. That may be all you can afford. You can only do what you can do, but your cat probably won't live as long because it's so hard on their kidneys. But anyway, so now we've covered the dogs and we've covered the cats pretty well. Petunia cordatus. Anyway, when I walk by here, I grab a leaf to eat. I love the flavor of these. I like to get the young tender ones. Soaks an herb that's so good for you. I eat a leaf once in a while, a little bit preventative. It's good for you. It's a citrusy, but unusual citrusy. Citrusy and other flavors. Most unusual leaf. I really like it. I don't know if I could eat a whole lot of it raw. A little bit in a salad would be really good. But yeah. Now, we talked about the chickens a little bit in some of my other videos, but and I just mentioned about sometimes I will, if you bake the eggshells a little and grind it up, just so it's not recognizable. I don't like to do it a lot because I'm so worried about them starting to eat their own eggs. So, but you can get oyster shells cracked and different types of calcium. Your chickens need it or your eggshells start getting thin and cracking, and then if they break when they're laying them or whatever and they start eating them, that's bad too. So you really need to keep those shells strong. Chicken food's getting expensive. Used to be a joke about everything is so-and-so's as cheap as chicken food or whatever. Chicken food is not cheap anymore. So, yeah, my chickens are molting, my older ones. That's why they look kind of funny. They're okay. They're just, every year your older chickens will molt. Your first year chickens don't molt in the fall, but when they get, I think about 2, they start molting. Anyway, free ranging is the best. There's so many dogs, neighbors' dogs all come through here. And I'm really scared of that, but I've got to start letting them free range as soon as I get my trailer blocked off where they can't get underneath and into my garden. That's the only way they can get into my garden now. Our little ones might get through some of the bigger fencing, my silkies, but I'm not too worried about them. They're not as destructive on a garden as your bigger chickens and scratching out your plants and all of that. So, not too worried if some of the silkies got in there. But, I mean, they might eat some of the young plants if they got to them, but they're just, I don't know. They've never been as destructive type of a bird as your bigger chickens. So I'm not too worried about that. It's one of my older Araconas there. That's a little bit younger Aracona there. My little Polish hen's got her head around there. I got to clip her feathers back on her head around her eyes or they can go blind. It's a bad thing about Polish hens. My brother years ago had a flock of them, but years ago I used to have several of them too, and their hats weren't as bad. Now they've been bred so much for the hat that it's so wide and fluffy and grows clear down next to their beak and in front of their eyes and around their eyes. You have to keep them clipped back or they go blind. So we don't want that. And it's really hard for them to see to find their food too. But they're the cutest little things and sweethearts. I just love Polish hens, but they are work nowadays. A lot more than they used to be. Okay, so for your chicken food, there's so many things. They love all different kinds of bugs and grubs and scraps. I feed my chickens all kinds of scraps, extra leftovers. When I'm picking my herbs and getting ready to dry, like today I dried a bunch of chocolate mint. And all the little bad leaves are extra. I just pick the tender, beautiful ones and I dry them. And the others I give to my chickens. I mean, I could dry them and use them myself, but I'm trying to give greens and herbs and stuff. I try to feed some to my chickens every day because they're not getting out and foraging. And even foraging up here, they still need extras. Any extras, they'll eat. And that goes into your eggs and the health of your chickens. So, just some ideas and things. I'm hoping that you got some ideas. If you have any questions, leave in the comments below or any comments you'd like to leave. Things that your chickens like or your animals like. I know I've left out a lot of things, but I just gave some basics and maybe that will help. And I hope that answered any questions. If not, I'll do the best I can to answer what questions you have, and I'll leave you with that. And we'll catch you all next time. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Thank you.